Someone might get
Step
their
forward
ass
if you
whooped in
agree.
here. They better be careful.
The transgender movement is indoctrinating our youth.
We are seeing, especially on social media, on TikTok, you're seeing a lot of people in this community really just targeting children. And you're seeing drag shows, even in conservative states like Texas, and even just media, movies. Like, it seems like everything seems to be targeted at these kids. You have drag story hour for kids, and it's just really, I think, predatory in a way.
And I feel like that's the problem that most people have with these movements, how aggressively they're growing. You know, it's just about the targeting with the children. I don't think anybody really cares about what happens to an adult. But when you look at people like Dwayne Wade, things of that nature, that's when it really gets kind of controversial, because people are like, hey, these are kids. They shouldn't be even talking about this. Like, this shouldn't even be something on their mind. And it almost seems like this is the kids are one of the main audiences that are being targeted.
I'm not saying every trans person is doing this, but as a whole, there does seem to be a route that they're taking to get to the kids.
When you hear Blues Clues playing in the next room, and then you hear the gay parade song, it's Blues Clues. You're not expecting to be talking to the children about that. It really makes you wonder, are they really coming for the children?
They got Blues Clues? That's wild. And that's too far. You know what I mean? Like, not Blues Clues. Not Blues Clues. Like, that just lets you know where society is going in a whole. They got Blues Clues. That's crazy.
And I think we see in our population now, the rate of young children who are identifying as transgender, non-binary is skyrocketing. And I think there's something to be said for people who are truly experiencing gender dysphoria, which we recognize exists, and those who are experiencing what is now going to be called, or in the future going to be called, this social contagion gender dysphoria, where they're being exposed to it on social media or in school, or mom and dad are having a conversation about it with children, and children are now starting to develop gender confusion.
Kind of like the placebo effect, you know, I guess. I think I'm using that correctly, where it's almost as if they believe that they have something just because they see it and they're around it all the time. You know, it just starts to have that effect. It grows on you. I know with the placebo effect, they give you a fake pill and tell you it's one thing. But I mean, this is essentially the same thing once you really think about it.
Or even babies, right? People who are being born, they don't have to put the gender on the birth certificate, and they're
That's
saying
crazy.
you can choose whatever you want to be. Like, that's so dangerous. Even
Yeah, I think
lying
that's
to them,
very
saying like,
dangerous.
oh, if we put you on hormone blockers at this age, it won't do anything to your puberty. It won't affect you long term. And it's just a straight up lie.
You can tell she really knows about this shit. And you can tell by her tonality, you could tell she came ready to air some shit out. That's the look of a woman who's about to set some shit on fire, for real.
And there's like an entire Reddit thread dedicated to people who've transitioned, talking about how much they hate their life now because they transitioned as a child and now they amputated off healthy body parts and are miserable.
All right. Can the disagree?
And one thing, I know I'm pausing a lot, but that is very true. There actually is a very long thread of, you know, people who regret those decisions, who made those decisions when they were young. And what makes it even more scary, the terrifying thing about it, is the parents, they're kind of backed into a situation now where they have to be okay. Because just think about it. If you're not okay with it and your kid goes public, I mean, just think about it. Just walk with me. Hypothetically, they could go to people, they could start talking, and people will start looking at your parents a certain way, start calling them out. And you guys know, I'm just going to be honest with you, when, you know, the liberals or the lefts, whatever you want to call them, these people who are just up in the wind with everything, you can't upset them. But it's free game. They can say whatever they want about you. So just imagine, you know, unless you truly don't give a fuck about how society views you and you're okay with putting your foot down, you know, the parents kind of lose the backbone, which I don't think is okay. It wouldn't happen to me. But playing devil's advocate, you can definitely see how things like that start to happen, because it's like they shove it down everybody's throat.
Step forward.
The fact that the trans movement has got people shook has me so excited. The trans movement is not indoctrinating our youth. Our youth are understanding who they are at a younger age. And from what I was hearing over here is a lot of what y'all were saying, I wonder would you say it to the parents? Because we need to really look at what the parents of trans youth really go through. Trans youth, instead of them enjoying their life, playing with their friends, they're up in legislation trying to fight for basic rights here.
Exactly. And you just really proved what they're saying. Instead of being kids, playing with toys, watching regular cartoons, they're getting swept into political agendas from people who are putting out this propaganda, who are much older than them, who got to enjoy their childhood. Exactly. Like, you're really just proving their point.
Here. 1 in 5 transgender youth have tried to commit suicide. Why are we trying to police them?
But you're bringing it only to the parents. The question was indoctrination in general. Am I correct? And then,
But they are part of that conversation. Someone said something about drag shows coming to schools or whatnot. The kids enjoyed it. The parents just had a problem with it. But that's their issue.
Whoa, who cares what the kids enjoy? The kids enjoy staying up, eating ice cream, playing video games, sleeping in. It's about what's right. There's a dress code. Like, does she know what drag is associated with? She has to. You know, and that's me being polite saying she. If I'm gonna keep it a thou wow, like come on now. Like, this is ridiculous.
It's only someone dressed in drag reading a story.
Is
that could
drag
have been
not
anybody.
blackface for women? I see it as a caricature.
Girl, hey, she's like 2-3 times your size. That look, the way I told you she was finna set it off, that look, you may want to get arm's distance. You know, do you know your reach? Do you know your reach? Do you know how to slip, rip, duck? Like, cause you she a woman now too now.
Of womanhood.
But inherently
As
sexual as
insulting.
well.
I have to agree with you guys. I do not like the drag queen social hours. I personally, as a trans person, didn't ever go to a drag show until I was about 40. I'm not for the sexualization of kids.
Now look, sitting like a bump on a log. Because there's just limits to certain things. There's just certain things that you don't show children, that you can't even argue with. Like, for example, I love video games. You know, I feel like there's things that you can learn in certain video games. I feel like video games are a really good medium for telling very interesting stories. I feel like they're that next leap for telling interesting stories. But if somebody sat here and tried to say, oh, well, you know, we should bring Call of Duty, the kids should be able to play Call of Duty at school, I would say hell no. Because it's school. Like, you got to have parameters. There's got to be boundaries, or everything's just to the fucking wolves.
Why are we not letting kids be kids and bringing sex into their lives so early?
I think it's predatory in general to talk about sex with children.
Yeah.
Regardless,
She used the
sex,
P
any
word.
kind of sex.
She used the P word. Look, she better watch out.
Who's teaching sex to 3rd grade children? I really want to know.
Have you looked at the California curriculum for sex education? You need to.
I know that when I was in preschool, I got my first crush on a boy, because to me at the time, he was in kindergarten, he looked like Prince Eric from
Little Mermaid.
Yeah, Little Mermaid. I don't think like fucking him ever crossed my mind when I was 4, but obviously like it would have been good to know that like it's okay, like if you have these feelings for someone of the same sex.
We think of youth in general, they're having sex at a lot younger age, whether we like it or not. Let's just keep it 100% real.
You don't think it's because of that?
I do not think it's because of that. It starts
There
at
is a
home with
correlation.
parents teaching their children. Because one or two things is gonna happen. Either you teach your children or the world is gonna teach your kids. That's the reality of it.
They are learning about it at young.
Okay, so if that's the case, what do you have to start homeschooling your kids? Do you have to start telling your kids, hey, don't listen to what they're telling you at school? Do you have to tell your kids, hey, no TV at all? Not even Blue's Clues? I mean, I'm just saying, look, I'm playing devil's advocate, because don't get me wrong. My parents, they watched everything. They watched everything that I watched. They made sure that we only watched certain things. You know, my parents were good parents. They were involved in my life. So it gets to a point where it's just like no accountability. Even she, you know, trans woman or whatever, no problem saying, look, they are sexualizing the kids. Like, it's just a fact, you know, and there's really no point in debating it, because it's just like, if you're not willing to accept that truth pill, then you're too far gone. Like, you don't care about the truth. You're in fairy tale land.
Younger ages from some adult, or even their peers who learned about it from adults. That is, in definition, indoctrination. As a mother, and seeing what my children are going to have to be introduced to at such a young age, like, I didn't even know what a gay person was till I was like 12. And so they're going to be having these really heavy adult conversations at a really young age, just because of their exposure. And that is honestly just scary, because I don't want to have those conversations. That's why I will be homeschooling my kids, because I do believe it is my responsibility to protect them and shield them from the outside world, which is targeting children.
The trans community and the trans movement is really shaking the course of what people think gender identity is supposed to be.
So in one sentence, you're saying that you guys are
By
not
poisoning the
responsible for
kids.
the indoctrination that's currently happening with
Absolutely
children.
not.
And in the second sentence, you are saying we are shook by the fact that you are responsible for it.
No, you are shook at the fact that the trans movement has become what it is.
And a movement that influences people all over the world, and particularly children. And we see it in the fact that the number of young people identifying as transgender, non-binary, gender fluid, genderqueer is skyrocketing, which means that children are being exposed to these ideas, and it's certainly coming from institutions like the media, like Hollywood, like our public institutions and schools. So to say that that is not happening, or to deny that that is the reality, negates the numbers that we're seeing.
What I would say is that the idea that there is a single transgender movement and ideology is disingenuous, and that at its core, being transgender is about separating sex from sex roles and gender roles that are compulsory.
Do you think that children should be able to transition medically?
No.
I think
No.
it just really depends on each individual situation. They should be able to make the best medical decision for them.
I am comfortable sharing bathrooms with the other side.
Yes, I feel comfortable. Safe, that might be a different question, but comfortable, yes, I feel comfortable.
What I think the bathroom issue opens up is an issue of predatory men taking advantage of the opening. That now they could walk into a women's bathroom or a women's locker room, as we've seen happen in instances like here in Los Angeles at We Spa. And they go into a women's space, they expose themselves to the women, and then they say, well, I'm a trans woman and you've opened up this space for me.
But we cannot blame trans people for that. And
Nobody's blaming you.
That's the problem right here. Because again, when you walk into the bathroom, I'm not interested in knowing what you are, what you identify as. I'm trying to use the bathroom and leave out of there. What people have tried to say is that when trans women go into the bathrooms, they're being predatory, and that is not the case. That is something we do not blame on trans women. Although you were not saying that, when we talk about predatory behavior and when we talk about like the predatory cases, none of them have been trans women. So I just want to make sure. I know she's not strictly doing that, but because she said that.
But the thing is, I've seen cases where literally men, like she said, they haven't transitioned. You know, they haven't done the snip snip or whatever, chop chop. But that's not a requirement for you to be a trans woman. Men are identifying as women and they're walking into restrooms, women restrooms, and all they're saying is that with this new this new culture that condones, that wants to change and make certain things acceptable, that's the Pandora's box that you open up. That's what comes with not caring about the packaging, more so about what you identify. You know, like, I don't think I need to explain why a man going into a woman's bathroom is dangerous at any age. It's a dangerous thing. It's a dangerous game. I understand that that biological man may feel like they are a woman. I understand that they may want to be recognized as a woman. That's fine. But at the end of the day, they're still a biological man. And I completely agree with the fact that it's peculiar to have for a woman to have to deal with that. You know, that type of that, like, those are the top fears of women, being raped, things like that. Like, that's the I know I can't use that word, but whatever. I just said it. That's like the main fear, or at least one of the top 5, top 3 fears of every woman everywhere. And literally, we see in the forefront movements that are trying to make that more what's the best word to say, more accessible. It's not very accessible if you have a dingling, you go to where the people with the dinglings go. You know what I mean? It's not it's more like, how do you feel? How are you feeling today? Because you could be fluid. You could be this one day, you could be that one day. It just opens up Pandora's box for opportune things like such to happen. It's just the truth.
I think it's very important that I bring that out on the table and discuss that.
We have to have the conversation, and I'll open up the question. We know that if this legislation happens, if we move forward with this move, there are going to be men who take advantage of it. Now, I want to ask you, is your comfort as far as going to the bathroom more important than the female women that will be victimized by this?
Who said female women will be victimized by this?
They will, and they have.
No, you're only assuming, but the reality of it is, again, when people are going into the restroom, when people are only going into the restroom, they're only focused on doing one or two things, and that's using the restroom.
Yeah.
But you didn't answer the question. Is your comfort more important than the female people who could be victimized by this?
Okay, so let me help her answer the question. Which one do you think I'm going to get the shit kicked out of me in? It wasn't the women's restroom. The issue that you're bringing up, first of all, is already violating a whole bunch of laws. Okay, if somebody's exposing themselves in a bathroom, that's a whole different environment rather than just letting trans people in. In California, it's right now 100% legal for trans people to go use the bathroom of their choice. So I don't know what law you're talking about.
You're asking this question as if I would not stand up for cis women that were in the restroom, and that's not the case. Nice dodge there. But the reality of it is, one thing I'm noticing is we're reducing a lot of these particular conversations to genitalia. And it's not about genitalia, it's about safety.
Yeah, her concern is the possibility of predation. And that's still a probability. It doesn't matter if trans people are using the restroom or not. Sure. What you're concerned about is that you're possibly that people feel more emboldened to put on women's clothes and go in the bathroom.
And you see, I hate these types of arguments. These are the worst type of arguments, because what they're essentially, this is essentially you say, hey, well, there's a chance you might die if you get into a car accident. And then someone says, oh, well, you could just die sitting in the house. It's like, yeah, but there's more of a risk. I hate arguments like that. I just hate it so much, because it's like, she's stating a fact. It's an ugly fact. It's a dark truth. It's something that we don't want to talk about, but you have to have the conversation. Men are going to take advantage of this. People are going to take advantage of this. Are you okay with understanding the fact that this being legal, people are going to take advantage of it? Are you okay with that? Because if you are, then that means that you prioritize your comfort for your identity, how you view yourself, over the safety of other women. Because I'm just going to say straight women. Because that's what I'm just going to say what it is. Like, that's how you feel. Just go ahead and answer the question and say that. And you can tell how they're kind of getting stern about that. It's the truth.
But they're still violating the law all over the place if that's the purpose that they're going in for.
Yeah, so I didn't step forward because, and I know in today's age this is going to sound very radical, and but I don't agree with the whole transgender ideology, and so for me it's encouraging something that is based in what I feel is delusion, and so I don't think that we should be encouraging that by.
She watches Matt Walsh. She just told them that they're delusional. Look at how they look. Like if they wanted to, they could kill her. Like the forearm strength and everything. Like they could destroy her.
Allowing men into women's restrooms.
I think that if that's the case, that to some extent all gender is delusion. If we're looking at historically anywhere from, midwives after the enclosure of the commons in the 1400s, having their whole trade affected, or Brewsters having their trade affected, and now we don't think of women as, Brewsters, or that creating beer is a womanly thing. These all came from social conditions. These all came, a lot of gender, regardless of biological sex, it didn't naturally flow out of our genitals, and it was we're like, this is how my genitals are, so this is how my gender is going to be. That didn't happen. That's not life. A lot of people who are either transgender or who are LGBT in general, all my friends were girls. At first, I just remember there were a lot of things where I would kind of come up against people telling me that that's wrong, that whether it's something I like, something I want to do. It wasn't until kindergarten that someone told me that I'm a boy, and I was like, oh, I don't feel comfortable going to any bathroom in this world, in the current society we live in. And to make trans women the whipping girls of that, I think that's disingenuous, but I do think that we need a systemic change to make ourselves safer. I don't really know anyone who doesn't feel a little bit uncomfortable going to the bathroom.
And trans people are not a delusion. Let's make it very clear. We're here. We've been here for ages. We've been here since the beginning of time. We're in your history.
She said
books.
You're delusional.
And I think it's very disingenuous to say that a whole identity is a delusion.
I believe that you feel like women. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying there is an objective truth, and I don't believe in his truth, her truth, their truth, my truth. There is truth, and
who defined that truth?
And it's already defined. And as a Christian, I believe God is the one who set truth.
But who defined that?
Is the truth?
Can you tell me who defined that?
Everyone. The first person to walk this earth. What Matt Walsh say? You see an animal that's pregnant, it's a female. You know why? Because females get pregnant. And don't hit me with those seahorses. Yeah, I get it. You Snapple fact fucking weirdo. I get it. Yeah, I know. Male seahorses give birth. Yes. We know. we know. Other than that, and there's probably some other weird ones. Other than that, it is almost 99% of the time a female. That's just the way that life is. Males, females. Are you a male? Are you a female? I can see you saying, a word like woman and something like, I can see that, but we do have to understand that there's male and there's female. They don't even understand that. It's wild to me.
God.
Living in the Bible Belt with religion taking center stage, it's hard for a lot of trans and non-binary folks like myself to really be able to express who they are. I had to really take on my gender dysphoria in private. I couldn't talk to my mom about it. I couldn't talk to my dad, my siblings, because ultimately I felt like it wasn't going to lead to anything because there wasn't a lot of education in the cis community like there is in the trans and non-binary community. We're talking about a book that was written by man with his own bias.
Who created chromosomes?
Yeah, I'm personally not religious, and I believe in science.
When we talk about chromosomes, it goes back to the conversation we were talking about earlier about being intersex.
But we're not talking about intersex. We're talking about people who were born as a male, and they...
People say intersex. Let me see what percentage, because I just have to, because this is such a used talking point. What percentage of people are intersex. Okay. As you can see, 1.7% of the population has intersex trait. So you're talking about 1.7. That's the way that you want to talk about dodge. Nice dodge, common use dodge, overused dodge, button mash, B-roll dodge, Elden Ring dodge. Like, you're tweaking. I'm so tired. I always hear that intersex thing thrown around like they got a whole bunch of buddies who are intersex. I bet you the average person has never met an intersex person, and if you seen an intersex person, you probably wouldn't even know, because they usually favor one gender. They usually have something removed. There's a whole bunch of things that go into it, and it's so small, so minute. It's not even worth bringing up in the grand scheme of the conversation. I get there's people who want to say, oh, well, are you saying those people don't matter? No, we're not saying that at all. Their feelings matter, blah, 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 to some people, because I'm gonna be real, I don't give a fuck. But overall, if we're gonna have a conversation, I don't want to be rude. I don't want to be disrespectful. I don't want to step on toes. In the most respectful way I can possibly say it, like, that's not a good rebuttal. You know what I mean? It doesn't really make it just doesn't make any sense, if you ask me.
They try to transition. The whole fact that they're trying to transition into a female in the first place shows that they aren't actually that, or else there would be no need to transition, right? So you say, okay, I feel like a woman. What is that? What does that feel like?
Yeah, how does it?
And how do you know?
I'm not saying I feel like a woman. I am a woman.
So then why did you transition? Why can't you just present as a man but be a woman?
I transitioned so I could be who I was. I did not feel like I was the person that I identified.
So you had to transition. You had to change your appearance because you knew the way that you naturally appeared was not that of what you wanted to be. So you changed your appearance to appear like what you wanted to be. You most definitely changed.
Identify with when I was born. So I took the steps to align my outside body with how I feel on the inside. What makes you stand up every day and make you identify as a woman? Let me challenge you on that.
I am a woman, and I don't like being called a cis woman because I'm not a cis woman. I'm a woman. I'm not a birthing person. I'm a mother.
So
I told you she dropping bombs. She said, quit calling me a cis woman. And I'm gonna be real. This whole cis, like, when I hear that type of stuff, I just know what type of conversation this is. I'm like, this is gonna be a conversation that is 100% in feeling. This is not a real biological. This is a happy, safe zone, friendly, feelings fueled environment. This is not no pure truth, bare bones truth. When I hear that cis word, I'm like, yeah, okay, yeah, all right.
Get mad at the terminology, not at trans people.
It's your new terminology.
But this is what I notice a lot of cis women do. The terminology has been around for so long. Cis is a prefix. Cis means same. Instead of getting mad at trans and non-binary people for using updated terminology, get mad at Webster. You're not going along with the times and being educated on the different pronouns and the different identities.
You have to admit, some of the pronouns are kind of ridiculous. I mean, to be, with all due respect, I'm sure you have to agree some of the pronouns
I don't think they're ridiculous. I think they're very expansive.
She did not just say that to her face. Trans and non-binary people just want you to respect their chosen pronoun. We are not trying to force pronouns on you. Just understand that the terminology is going to continue to grow. If you're willing to educate yourself and understand, then you've got it.
The ability to give birth is a woman's greatest strength.
One moment.
Can the disagreeer step forward?
I'm not able to have children. So I'm still strong. I'm funny. I'm physically strong. I'm smart, and I have a lot of strength. I don't believe that having a baby is the greatest strength, because not all of us can. I cannot have kids due to medical issues from a medical procedure that I had when I was younger. And It's
That's sad.
it's a hard subject to talk about. It's doesn't mean I'm any less of a woman, but can we get another question? I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
One of the things that I regret was the fact that I would never be able to do that, but I was honored in the ability to participate it from the other side. Women are amazing. They don't just deal with that, so.
While giving birth is not a woman's greatest strength, I do think that only biological women are capable of going through that process and bringing life into the world.
I need to push back on that because we're all...
What are you talking about? What is she talking about? Like, literally. I need to know. What is she talking about? What do you mean you're going to push back on that? Only biological women can have kids. That's just facts. You can't argue with that. You can't push back on that. You're pushing back on that on behalf of your feelings. We're talking about truth. We're living in reality.
Also forgetting that trans men and trans masculine people can also give birth as well. And I don't think it's fair to just set it on one group that says that just biological women have that power.
She is pulling different trans this, like she is pulling stuff out of her ass at this point.
Power to just give birth. And we have to be very clear when we look at the nuances of birth.
I recognize that there are people who have different identities. There are biological women who identify as men and then go on to give birth. I would argue, however, that those people are still biological women. And I know that is something that can offend many, but that stands as my belief.
So the correct term is actually cisgendered woman. Cis means same. It means that you identify with the birth that you were assigned. And so, you know, I just really...
She's just being petty at this point, honestly. Like she's really just being petty at this point. She's getting some type of pleasure out of labeling them cis, even though they've kind of made it clear that, hey, we don't we don't want to, we don't indulge in that mumbo jumbo. Like we are regular women, and she's just like, oh, the correct term, get mad at Webster. And it's like, oh, you mean the company that was probably bullied into doing that, or else they would be canceled by the cult that you guys run. I mean, let's just keep it 1,000.
Really wish that we would kind of be a little bit more mutable to the terminology, because I think that's what really is going to open up that dialogue and that discussion.
If I may, I think the crux of the conversation kind of comes back to, are trans women women? And I think if we don't agree there, it's going to be very difficult to kind of keep the conversation going or even agree on the points that you guys are talking about, because if we don't believe that trans women are women, then the conversation kind of ends there in terms of whether they're like men can give birth or not. If
Exactly. Conversation over. Conversation over. It's done with. What more is there really to talk about when you sit here and say that only women can have birth, and a person looks you dead in your eyes and say you want to disagree with that? That's why she even got a little smirk on her face. She gonna fuck around and get punched out. You know, she gonna fuck around and get punched out. Somebody gonna whop her upside her head. She keep on talking to old girl like this. No cap.
that makes sense.
I'm not sure that's the case. I feel like the ability to give birth is not like the end all be all of a woman's like meaning in life and
we never said that.
Herself and her personality.
We never said that. We just said that was one of the requisites to be a biological woman, like that, to be able to have a kid. I meant to say that's one of the requisites to have a kid. You have to be a biological woman. No artificial, no trans woman is capable of doing that. Only biological women can give birth. That doesn't mean that there aren't biological women who are born who can't give birth. Yes, there's due medical disorders and whatnot. I mean, it's crazy that we even have to break this type of stuff down.
And I think that if you can acknowledge that, I would also then maybe challenge the idea that womanhood, as opposed to like a female sex, like womanhood is a consistent thing that has always been one way.
So how would you define womanhood?
You sound like Matt Walsh.
It's a good
Nice dodge. Now answer the damn question.
Womanhood, to me, is about standing in integrity. It is about being confident in who you are. And me, as a Black trans woman, should not be a threat to you. And what I see from a lot of cisgender women is they're trying to deem what womanhood is supposed to look like. I have my own perspective of womanhood. We can coexist in the same world, but the reality is we get so stuck on parts. Having a vagina is not the only thing that makes you a woman. I'm sorry. It takes integrity, it takes courage, it takes lifting other women up. It takes those things to begin to defy womanhood, and there's so many other different things.
Okay, call me crazy, but I genuinely believe that, you know, this whole conversation revolves around genitalia, and I hate to break it to anybody who's conditioned their mind to think otherwise. That's the stick in the sand, the line in the sand, as they'll say. Like that's just what it is. Either you got a dick or you got a vagina. You know what I mean? Like you got one of the two. And to make it seem like there's all these other stuff that matters within it. Look, you can show me a guy who paints his nails, does all this, is real feminine, watches the most feminine shows, cries more than a woman, knows all the woman bones and knows all the specific body parts that a woman knows. He can have way more knowledge on just female anatomy. I'll tell you right now, he's a man. You know why? Because there's a dick in between his legs. I'm just saying.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Okay, so if I were a white person and I said Blackness is about integrity and courage and kind of the same thing that you used to define womanhood, and then I said I want to transition into a Black person and I'm white, and I'm redefining what Blackness is to fit what I view it as, right? There's no objective reality of what Blackness is. Would you consider that appropriation?
I told you she's dropping nukes. Let's see how she responds.
Or do you think that's something I should be allowed to do?
I consider that dodging, and I consider that comparing apples to oranges, because race and gender identity are two separate different things. Because when we look at race, we have to look at many, many different structures of what whiteness and white supremacy looks like, and how white supremacy can be manipulated.
Whoa, wait. How did we get on white supremacy? This is a conversation between two Black women. See, you can get away with stuff like that on Twitter. You know, they got the little circle, but you can't do that face to face. You can't claim white supremacy when you're sitting here having a conversation with a Black woman. Like, what are you going to say? Are you going to say, oh, it's because you're light skinned, like, man, get that bullshit out of here, man. That's what I'm saying. That's that silly shit. That's that silly shit. And you see, she's been the most petty one, the most petty trans woman here. You know, the other trans woman, they just don't seem petty. You know, she keeps on saying the word disingenuous. Oh no, the other girl keeps on saying disingenuous. This lady is the most disingenuous one. She keeps on labeling them as cis women when they've already said, hey, we don't want to be called that. She labels them that again, and now she's claiming white supremacy because people believe in biology, because people believe in science. It's crazy.
Into other things. And what happens is the closer you are in proximity to whiteness, you're able to weaponize it.
She over here cackling, a white lady cackling like
against other people.
What?
It reminds me a lot of Rachel Dolezal, who, you know, masqueraded as a Black woman. It really did open up many more doors of conversations around it, but it's still wrong. It's still not fair, because she will still ultimately have a privilege that I, as a Black trans woman, would not begin to have.
What's interesting is that we're talking about race and gender, or as we probably like to call it on our side, sex. Race actually has a more understandable structure for people being transracial. Race does actually exist on a spectrum. I'm biracial. Many perceive me to be black, even though I am also half white and half black. We label people like President Obama as a black president, even though he is as well. Race has never had binary markers. It does exist on a spectrum. Gender, however, does have binary markers. As much as we try, as much as we change the way that we self-present, chromosomes are not going to change. And that's just a reality.
All right, I'm going to bring up a little point here because you talked about the binary side of gender. Well, I was born a little of both. I believe I never had my chromosomes checked, but since I fathered 2 children, I'm assuming I have the correct male chromosomes. So I was intersexed, and there's a lot of reasons that happens, none of which are well studied or understood, but a friend of mine in the pediatric trauma world says about 1 in 150 kids come out with some degree of ambiguity in their gender. For me, that appeared as always feeling out of place. And for the first week of my life, I was in the surgical wards at Naval Hospital in San Diego getting pieces of me cut off. So, and then they gave me testosterone for the first 11 years of my life. I wish the world were truly sexually binary. It would make it so much easier. But there is a little bit of a smear. And, as a trans person, I'm a very conservative trans person.
I just want to address this one point that he just made, or she just made. It's hard because his voice, her voice. Here's the thing. It's like what you just stated is a sad thing. I'm not going to be an asshole. I'm not going to have a heart. What he just stated is sad, but here's the thing. It was sad for you to go through, but as I stated before with being intersex, you're that one kid out of 150. You're telling me that if I do something 150 times, one time it comes out a certain type of way. You guys do the math and you tell me the percentage of that. You know what I mean? You do the math. It's insignificant. So it's just like, it's not hard for the other 149. I can understand hearing the side of the 1%, but trying to turn the 1% into the majority, I feel like that's where the problem is.
Don't see the huge gender spectrum that a lot of people in the trans community do. Do I feel better having transitioned? Yes, absolutely. I used to live in a little shell, very large shell, but now I'm much more open about who I am. Is that the only thing that generally defines a woman? No, I don't think that is the only thing that generally defines a woman.
Right. I think there are a lot of women who may be on our side of the argument who will try to maybe invalidate your experiences by saying you can't give birth or you can't have a period. And while those things may be true, I'm sure there's a lot of other different struggles that you all are going through. And I would truly believe that you probably are highly discriminated against in our society, and it is hard to be you. It is hard to go through the things that you go through and have to deal with some of the responses that you get from people. And it's not a struggle that I would wish on myself at all.
Not a struggle I wish on my worst enemy.
Trans women should be.
This is part 1. It's about 20 minutes in. We're gonna do a part 2. I know most people don't got that large of a attention span, and this is just going to be a whole another can of worms.